Dealing with debtor excuses has been a challenge for many a call center agents across the world and indeed in South Africa. We've taken it upon ourselves to provide a solution as ICAN to assist agents deal with it differently. We call it the ICAN way. And what that means is, how do we solve the one problem that call centers have in the collection space? Often when an agent is confronted with an excuse such as debt review, unemployment, or affordability, or fraud, they would transfer this to another department, change the category of the call so that someone else can deal with it. And in the external debt collection space, often the account is referred back to the client, and we believe that is wasting and losing so much opportunity. We've made contact with a customer, and we need to overcome that. And we believe that our training program, and you'll see some of it in the background now in the video today, is available on YouTube. And if you're a subscriber or you one of the ICAN clients, you'll have free access to the videos, and as well we've also created a few assessments or quizzes that you can take to understand, to help understand your level. So the challenge is unemployment. Probably number 1 out of 10 of the excuses. It's quite a challenge in South Africa. Almost 34% of our consumers, not on consumers, but the population is unemployed. It's significantly high in South Africa, and therefore not surprisingly quite popular as an excuse. But unemployment in South Africa, with its very sophisticated labor legislation, there's quite a few remedies available. So as a smart agent, be mindful of what's available to the consumer in respect of resources such as the unemployment insurance fund. In some instances, they might have credit life insurance that covers some of these. Some people might, if they've lost a job, might have access to their packages. If they're retrenched, they might have access to resources. So please, guys, we encourage you, when unemployment is used as an excuse, please don't end the call there. You need to be asking questions. What was it? What happened? Were you fired? Were you retrenched? Because with that, there are resources available in South Africa in particular that can assist consumers get over this difficult bump. And on average, people find jobs within 6 months. That's part of a survival element, and I think you just have to be mindful. And we make a distinction between the two components, one being the death of the actual debtor, as it were, or where a debtor is alive but uses it as an excuse, where they say they've contributed to a relative or family member's funeral. Quite popular in South Africa. We spend significant amounts of money on funerals. It's a thriving business in South Africa, and it's often linked to certain cultures where people are kind of obligated to contribute and use whatever resources available. But it's not an excuse for not repaying debt. As you can see, it's a very lucrative business. Over 10 billion annually is used for all the activities linked to a funeral. But it's not an excuse. As it says there, it's no excuse for not paying. So we encourage you to ask questions, not to just jump into a scenario where you think that there's you cannot engage. If it is a relative, we provide you with some very useful tips, with sensitive guidelines dealing with a relative if the debtor is deceased, and what the process is, and guiding them through that if it is available, so that they can apply for the various remedies available. But if it is somebody that is contributed to a funeral, first of all, you can't prove it, and so it's not an excuse for not repaying. Obviously, we encourage you to be empathetic, but for affordability, again, like a classic in South Africa, and also we say it in tongue-in-cheek because it's popular. I think most agents on any given day would be confronted with this as an excuse, and we provide you with very good tips in dealing with this excuse. Many kind of reasons is brought up by consumers. Unemployment is significant in South Africa. COVID brought about some challenges as well for people to, where they wouldn't given any significant increases, or they had to take a reduction in income. So it is real, but also, as we always warn you, the consumers are smart and they do figure out kind of what works with other contact centers. So as a smart agent, we've trained you differently. We encourage you to really kind of take on the tips that we've given you, that this is not a valid excuse anymore, and it's not a valid excuse for not paying, because there should be a way out of it in respect of, first of all, asking the right questions. What has led to this? Is an affordability issue? Are they over indebted? And obviously you'll be able to assist them with your repayment plans, and perhaps offering a discount if that's available, or in fact to structuring the payment arrangement so it's a little bit more affordable. That's queries, and the queries could vary from they've made a payment, they've got a problem with the product or the service, and for that reason they're not paying, and it's quite popular in South Africa, and we've covered it also in the training itself, and it's just something that you need to be kind of prepared for, because this happens on a daily basis. In fact, recently there was a scenario with a client where they have a payment issue, so payments are not reflecting on their collection system. And I said to them, the way to deal with that is, especially if a debtor does have an outstanding balance and they claim they've made a payment of a certain value, don't argue, don't have debates, don't get into a fight. You're clear on what your objective is to get a payment arrangement or even a settlement, and to overcome that, you'll say, well, thank you, we appreciate that you've made the payment. It may not reflect in my system, it's probably processing at the moment, so I've noticed that you've got a certain amount still outstanding. How about us making an arrangement for the next payment, and in fact, for your convenience, how about taking out a debit order, which will make things much smoother. So there you overcome it. It's not that difficult. Don't get too stuck into the technicalities, and often companies have very, very good administration, or in fact customer service departments that will assist in that regard. However, they need to pay. Most companies will focus on solving the problem. If it's a service issue or the product is defective, it's not an excuse for not paying. Right? So I think always encourage the debtor to continue with making payment arrangements and sticking to the payments. And if you can see, there's almost 22 typical excuses for not paying. So we encourage you to prescription. Again, I would put in the top 3 out of 10 of excuses used in South Africa, and often I find that a collection agent who's not capable of dealing with it would rather create a query or put this into a special folder because they do not want to cause any ructions with the consumer for the fear of any kind of challenges coming their way. But we have created this video to help you through that, to help overcome that. Prescription is a remedy available to consumers where no collection activity or no payments have taken place for a period of 3 years. And you'll also read that there are other types of debt that prescribes over different periods, and very clear rules around that. But it's important to understand what prescription is, how it applies, and most significantly, that kind of part of your job as an agent is to interrupt prescription. And by getting a promise to pay or someone acknowledging that they owe money, there we go. You've helped your company and your clients significantly. So please don't be too stressed out about this as an excuse. Part of your goal is to interrupt prescription, but you need to be clear to understand the processes, understand the rules around it, and if debt is prescribed, I can guarantee you there's no ways the accounts will be moved to the collections department or will be outsourced to an external debt collector. Again, I remind you this, that it's a popular excuse, and debtors can become quite technical, but as a smart agent, you just be calm. Understand. Our training video on debt review as an excuse for not paying became quite popular, and the students quite enjoy it because it's a very topical subject matter. But we would like to encourage you to pay quite a bit of attention to the detail around it. It is a popular defense or remedy for debtors in South Africa, and rightly so. We've got a very bad history in South Africa of the credit providers really kind of over-indebting our consumers. So I think yes, it's justified. But I think the key components that you need to take out of this, that there are various stages. It's very time sensitive. So as a collection agent, it's critical that you understand the various phases. There's the 17.1 when the application is made, when they're gathering information and so forth and so on. It goes through the various stages, but it's important to understand the phases and to ask the right question. Remember, administration order in South Africa has been around for a very, very long time. In fact, you can still see some of these remedies being used up until today, and it's quite significant on the Credit Bureau reports. Again, another popular excuse for not paying, and it's, again, we repeat that it's important that you understand what administration order is, at what point you are able, as a collection agent, is able to engage with the debtor. But I also promise you that if you look at the tips on the video, that it's highly unlikely that an account will be given to the collections department, or in fact handed out to an external debt collector if a consumer is going through the process. So always keep that in mind as a collector. If a consumer brings this as an excuse for not paying, we provide you with some very good tips on asking, especially what stage they are in the process, and we encourage you to go through the tips on the video. It's not a valid excuse. In the instances, obviously, when it is, it's true that they are going through the process. Obviously, then there are certain processes you need to follow. But as some other lender has started the process, or if the account has been outsourced to you as an external debt collector, that your client has started the process of applying for the judgment, so therefore they are unable to negotiate or make payment arrangements and so forth and so on, or the fact that they have a judgment granted already. So again, we encourage you to become comfortable with the solution or remedy. It is, as I said, there's various specific phases. For instance, most credit providers would first send a letter of demand, or what others would also issue a section 1 to 9. That's a letter kind of just outlining kind of the goal that the client has and what options the debtor has, what rights they have, and then they go through the process, and even as far as to the stage where they get the judgment, and also then there are options available after that fact where they can go for their assets. So it is important to understand, again, sequestration, or where people are declared insolvent, is quite popular as a solution available to debtors. Very pricey, but something that we believe it's important for you to understand, become familiar with, become comfortable with, because it can be quite tricky if you don't understand the process. And again, we cover this in our training on YouTube. So very, very important that you go through that and even work through the learner guide. And we're repeating ourselves because we believe that knowledge is power, and if you can become more and more comfortable with understanding how the process works, the legislation associated with, you can overcome it. It is a very expensive solution available to consumers in South Africa, and somebody who uses this as an excuse will be very close to the process, because it involves quite a bit of scrutiny, and getting certain professionals like an insolvency practitioner involved. Again, highly unlikely that an account will be moved to the collections department or outsourced. So it's critical that you just look at the training video and just be on the lookout for the tips. It's right at the back. You'll see there, kind of preparation. There we go. And you can see, so just, use the resources that you have to empower yourself. And in South Africa, fraud is one of the most popular excuses that debtors use for not paying. We cannot blame them. It's quite prevalent in South Africa, and for that reason, as you can see on our YouTube channel, we've included it. We've provided you with a comprehensive training video, but I want to cover the key points. I think what is important to understand that it's not an excuse. They are quite simple and uncomplicated processes, and most credit providers would in fact invest significantly because they lose as well. So they will investigate, they will look into the matter and kind of work with the debtor in that regard. And so if it is brought up as an excuse, please be cautious. If you just think about yourself, if any of this would, something like this would happen to you personally, you would immediately bring it to the credit provider's attention, wouldn't you? You would immediately kind of inform the police or the various authorities that can assist you. So this is important, and that as a debt collector, that you are clearly and mindful of the potential that the debtor might actually be using this excuse falsely. So we provide you with some very, very useful tips asking the right questions, determining when the fraud was perpetrated, whether they've reported it, and so forth and so forth. So the video provides quite useful tips, but I think for the purpose of the call flow, it is essential as a collector that you understand how this whole process plays out, and secondly, to understand that you can overcome this as an objection raised by a debtor.